Well, good morning. It is a morning, man. Here we go. Snow, football, all of those things rolled together. And we're in this series, well-timed, I might add, talking about a better way than better than. We've been talking about the goat problem, the greatest of all time. We love that debate here in New England, greatest of all time. We love comparison and figuring out which is the best and where do we fit in that story. The goat problem. So I've been working on this for probably a few months, a little bit here and there. And one of the tensions that sort of bubbles up, it's the goat problem. It's the problem with this is that we want to preserve, I want to preserve goals and ambition. I want to preserve striving for excellence without the cancer of comparison. That's the problem, right? We're not advocating for a goalless society. We're not saying that all striving and ambition is somehow unhelpful. No. In fact, we want to preserve goals and ambition, striving for excellence, but we're looking for a way to do it without that cancer that is comparison. See, comparison has a way of turning the joy of excellence, the joy of growth and doing better. It takes the joy of those things and trades it for not good enough. Where we should be rejoicing in excellence, in new frontiers, in growth, in what God is doing in our lives, instead we traded it. We've lost it for the joylessness of comparison. We've lost the joy in what God is doing in our lives in this very moment. That's the problem with comparison. Comparison sort of sits right at the center of the problem. In fact, I would say every week we will touch on it a little bit, but I wanted to tackle it today, comparison. And here's how I want to do that. I want to bring your attention to three passages. In fact, there are three passages that are probably worth going back to this week on your own and just sort of reading through. There are two passages that talk about the anxiousness of comparison, and then one I think that offers an unlikely solution. So let me begin with the anxiousness of comparison in the book of Job. If you're new to the Bible and the story of the Bible, Job is a narrative. It's actually the oldest book in the Bible by historical writing. And it tells the story of a righteous, good, upright man who is deeply tested through suffering at the hands of Satan. It is a book that brings up all kinds of issues we're not going to mind today. I just want to go to it for one reason. In the middle of his suffering, Job is literally losing everything. His livelihood, his family, his joy, it is all falling apart. And then here come his friends. And oh my goodness. With friends like this, who needs enemies? They show up, and here's what it says, Job chapter 4. Let's start in verse 1. It says, "Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied to Job." So Eliphaz this is his friend. He's been watching Job's story. Job is a success. Job has climbed the ladder. Job has won. And you have to wonder if there's not a little bit of looking across by Eliphaz with comparison, with envy. Because his friend shows up and, well, here's what he says in verse 7. He says, Job, stop and think. Do the innocent die? That's a good friend right there. Guy is suffering, struggling, lost his family, his career. And his friend shows up to say, do innocent people suffer? Do the innocent die? When have the upright, Job, when have the upright been destroyed? My experience shows, my goodness, this guy is full of himself. My experience shows that those who plant trouble and cultivate evil will harvest the same. Here's the problem. He's just wrong. He's wrong. He's wrong. He assumes, and this is the anxiousness of comparison, he assumes that blessed is better. He assumes that pain is proof of sin, of failure, of guilt. He assumes that blessed is better. Here's what he believes, like a lot of us, that better off is better than. Better off, they're better off. They must be better than me. Better off is better than. Have you ever felt it? Have you ever looked across at somebody and just thought, man, it's just, I don't get it. Better off must mean they're better than. And it's a lie. It's wrong. It's not true. But Job's friend in his darkest hour, he believes it. He doesn't just believe it, folks. He says it. You got people in your life that believe stuff and they're smart enough not to say it. Eliphaz just jumped right in. Yeah, I don't know where, but you're a mess. This is your fault. I know it is. Because people don't suffer for nothing. If you were better, you would be better off. Except it's not true. But this is the lie that is couched deep in our souls, that we believe better off is better than. It assumes that better off is better than. This is the anxiousness of comparison. When we look across and we see someone else and we think that and there's something deep inside of us, primal, that's just terrified that they're better because they're better off. And if they're better, that means be lesser. We may not say it out loud, and nobody may say it to us, but we feel it somewhere deep inside of us. Job's friends just said it out loud for everyone to see. My experience shows, innocent do not suffer. This has got to be your fault. Your pain is proof that you're not good enough. Well, how could that not cause deep, deep anxiousness in our lives? Here's another story. It pulls something else out. Matthew chapter 6. Jesus tells this one in verse 28. He says, and why worry? Remember this passage perhaps? And why worry about your clothing? Look at the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work or make their clothing, yet Solomon in all of his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. The great Solomon, builder of temples, wealth, and wisdom. Even he wasn't dressed as beautifully as that lily. But then it turns and it says something that's important. It says, and if God cares so wonderfully for wildflowers that are here today and thrown into the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? I like that last part. He will certainly. It's like Jesus is reminding us. That's what he's doing here. He's reminding. He's saying, hey, let me remind you of what God thinks of you. So, Miroslav Volf, in his great little book, The Cost of Ambition, which has been a good guide for me in this series, he calls this, I love this, comparison amnesia. Comparison amnesia. In comparison amnesia, we forget who we are while we're trying to be who they are. Have you ever done that? So taken with who they are and what they've done and what they're like, and that we forget who we are. That's sort of what Jesus is going to here. He says, have you forgotten who you are? See, this is at least in part the anxiousness of comparison. We forget who we are. We forget who we were made to be. We forget what God is doing in our lives. We forget all of his benefits. We forget his image in us. We forget who we are while we're trying to be who they are. That's comparison amnesia. And it's rampant. We get so wrapped up in who they are and what they're doing and what they've accomplished and what they look like and how they talk and where they go. We're so desperate to be who they are, we forget who we are. Soren Kierkegaard is a Danish theologian, philosopher from the mid-1800s and moving forward. And he's famous for lots of his writings, which are deep reads. But I've always found him particularly interesting for his parables. That he takes the gospel narrative and he weaves it into parables. And he tells the story of the lily and the bird. But it's not just the lily and the bird. It's a great little story. It's the lily and the naughty bird. You'll see what I mean. He tells the story of a beautiful lily. It illustrates this comparison amnesia so perfectly. A beautiful lily planted by the side of a stream. It's growing, it's flourishing, and just as this passage, Jesus says, it's clothed in splendor. It's beautiful. And then one day along comes this bird, this naughty bird. It's not just a good bird. It could be a good bird, but this is a naughty bird who's flown around and seen everything and comes and sees this beautiful lily and strikes up a conversation. It's a fairy tale, right? And instead of telling the lily the beauty that it sees in the lily, the naughty bird says, I've flown everywhere, and let me tell you, I've seen the most amazing lilies out there. They're more beautiful than you. In fact, there's one, the imperial lily. Oh, it's so beautiful. Every day the bird comes and it just goes on and on and on about the beautiful lilies that are out there, leaving the lily by the stream to feel almost humiliated. And at one point in the story, the lily doesn't even feel worthy to be a lily. Are you there yet? Man. The lily starts to believe it. Starts to believe that if it could just be with those grander lilies, it could be like them. And finally convinces this naughty bird to take it on a trip. And it pecks away all the soil around its roots. It picks it up and it flies it away, where it withers and dies. End of story. I didn't say it had a happy ending. It's a cautionary tale. It's a true tale of comparison, amnesia, where we forget. And Jesus is reminding us, don't you remember? You are much more valuable than that lily. The anxiousness of comparison. We forget who we are. I said there were 3 passages, though, and I want to offer another, because in this series, I said what I wanted to do was to offer at least 4 practical ways that we could live without living under sort of the burden of being better than, a better way than better than. Last week, we started with the simple beauty of calling. What are you called to do? Who are you called to be? What is your calling? And none of us have just one. We're in different spheres of our lives. We have different callings and places. But identifying the simple beauty, God has called me here, is one of the ways that we live with goals and striving for excellence and ambition without having to strive to be simply better than. So here is one more. Let me introduce it by reading to you a passage from Luke chapter 14. In Luke 14, Jesus is going to tell a number. This is a passage worthy of going back and reading all through it. There's the whole of the chapter kind of lays out a story. I just want to pull a piece from the middle, but in it, Jesus is at a dinner, and he notices how people jockey for position, the seats of honor, and Jesus is going to tell them, "Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't take take the humblest seat, and let someone invite you to the seat of honor. Don't strive for that." But in the middle, he gives these parables, and this one is helpful. Luke chapter 14. This won't be obvious at first how it applies, but give me a second. Verse 12. Then Jesus said to his host, he says, "When you give a luncheon or a dinner," remember those words. When you give a luncheon or a dinner, which is what he's doing right now, "do not invite your friends, your brothers, or your sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid." Now, this is not a lesson here that says you can't have dinner with your friends and neighbors, and ones that are wealthy really don't get invited. That's not what it means, right? He's here offering a distinction. So here's what he says next. "But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Now, this story could be an entire series. I don't, and there are lots of lessons, but I just want to pull one as it applies to here. There is a story here. He's saying there's a distinction if you watch closely the words. He says, when you offer a lunch or a dinner, don't just invite those people who make you feel good, the people that you're close to, the people who you know and benefit from. Don't just do that when you have a lunch or a dinner. But then he says, when you have a banquet, did you see the difference in words? That's intentional in this passage. When you have a banquet, invite the poor, the needy, the struggling, the stranger, the distant. Banquet. Now, I'll confess to you, not some modern translations sort of, they water this down, and this distinction doesn't show up. But the distinction is there, and it's important. There's a meaning here, and the meaning is like the setting that you would normally reserve for the people that are closest to you. Give to the people who are distant from you. There is a Christian principle, a Christ-following principle, that we don't simply feed the poor. We treat them with generous dignity. We give them, as it were, a banquet. That's the meaning. Like when you have a banquet, like this is like open the door and treat those who are distant like you would treat those who were close. All right. So I think there is a lesson here for us in comparison. And here it is. When you have people who you feel distant from, competitive with, superior to, or inferior to, give them a banquet. Jesus is saying there is something powerful and there's a reward for it. There's a reward when those people who are distant and don't do anything for you, those people that perhaps you feel superior to or inferior to, invite them to a banquet. Now, I'm not recommending dinner parties, though I love dinner parties. But I do want to recommend something practical. I came up with a phrase for it. A banquet of words. Give them where you feel distant, where you feel superior or inferior, competitive, comparison, joylessness. Throw them a banquet of words. I just want to call this the power of a compliment. You see, comparison is a lie. At its fundamental base, it's simply a lie. And a compliment says so. You see, you're shining light on something. Remember when your kids were little, or maybe you've got little ones still, and the first when they first started like sleeping in the room on their own, and they were afraid because there was something in the closet or something under the bed and the lights, and you'd have to come in, and you would have to you would console them. What would you do? You would turn lights on. You would open up closets. You would get on your hands and knees. You'd look under the bed. Nothing under there. Why? Because lies don't disappear because we ignore them. They disappear because we expose them. This is what a compliment has power to expose the lie that you're believing. When you use these words, the power of a compliment, let me show you, let me give you 3 examples that will, I think, illustrate it. Compliment them for a blessing you don't have. Do you ever see somebody with a blessing you don't have? That car you want. And they got. Come on. You may have even just gotten a new car, but it's not as nice as that car. Compliment their car. They got into the school you wanted to get into. Oof. Heavy. Compliment. They got a job, a promotion, a windfall. Compliment them for a blessing you don't have. Here's what this does. This counters the lie that I'm unworthy. That blessed means better. Just by saying it, the power of calling it out, of going to someone and genuinely complimenting them for the blessing in their life that you don't have, that you may have wished you did have. It calls out the lie in our soul that says, my pain is proof that I'm not good enough. It calls it out. It puts a light on it. It calls out the lie that I'm not worthy enough. Here's another one. Compliment them for a way you see they are unique. You ever meet somebody that's just good at something? They're smart. They read fast. This is like, I'm not a fast reader. I love reading, but I'm not a fast reader. They consume information. They're skilled at a sport. The ones that really get me are the people who have unique gifts that are tied to Christian living. People who are deeply compassionate. I would confess, you may not know this, I am not a deeply compassionate person. That may disappoint you in your pastor. I'm like in the list of spiritual gifts, it is not, God did not bless me with an overwhelming amount of that. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have to work at it. I do. And sometimes I meet people that are just naturally, genuinely wired, gifted, uniquely like Jesus. I could be so, but it's not just compassion. It could be any gifting. It's where we're different. And here's what this does. It counters the lie that says our differences are what make us valuable. Oh, they're so much like. That's what makes them valuable, better, good. I'm just saying, call out the lie with a banquet of words. Find those people where you feel superior, inferior, competitive, distant. And give them a banquet of words. A genuine, deeply felt compliment about where they're unique or how they're blessed. There's one more. I saved it for last because it may be the hardest, but it also may be the first. Compliment them with prayer. There is something powerful about intentionally praying for someone you find yourself struggling to compare to. In fact, you don't even have to tell them you're praying for them for this to work. This is powerful. Like, pull out your prayer journal. If you don't have one, start one. Write it down. Just go ahead and try it tomorrow morning. Just go ahead and try it. Find somebody you feel competitive with and pray for them. And watch what you start praying. Half the stuff you won't want to write down because you'll feel like, God, give them what they deserve. No. God, I don't understand why they're better off than I am. In fact, I believe this one starts in private. Pray for them. Pray for their flourishing, their blessing, their success. Pray for their protection. Pray for their closeness to the Father. Pray for them. Here's what this does. This counters lies that we believe that feel we're not worthy. We're not good enough. You see, the reason I pray for you, the reason you deserve prayer is the same reason I deserve prayer. You were made in God's image. And he loves you. And I was too. And he loves me. You see, when you pray for somebody, you remember the value that they have. And as soon as you do that, you remember the value that you have. That our value is not in our difference. My value is not in my accomplishment or my success. It's not in my achievement. It's not in my awards, my accolades, my applause, my approbation. No. My value, like your value, is that God made you. And he loves you. And he made me. And he loves me. I'll go back to Miroslav Volf, who is a professor now of theology at Yale and writes so much that's worth. But this is his book on the cost of ambition. He said something, I just wanted to read it. It fits this. He says, every human being, each in their own way, has the same glory. And this glory is incomparably greater than the glory of any distinction they could struggle themselves into. I read it again. Every human being, each in their own way, has the same glory. And this glory, the one that's in us, is incomparably greater than the glory of any distinction they could struggle themselves into. I mean, that's the solution to comparison in a nutshell. It's the better way than better than. Your glory is God's glory in you. You were made in his image. And nothing you could struggle yourself to could ever approach the glory that is already in you. Your glory is God's glory in you. In other words, I'll get it down to 2 words. 2.5. You're glorious. You're glorious. Not because of what you've done or what you haven't done. You say, I don't feel very glorious. You haven't seen my list of failings. No. Your glory is his glory in you. You were made in his image. You are an image bearer of the God of the universe. That is your unique glory. It's where our greatness comes from. And it's what reminds us that comparison has no power over us. And when you pray for people you feel competitive with, superior to, inferior to, you are calling out the lie that says you are better when you do better than them. You are reminding yourself that your glory is God's glory in you, made in his image. Glorious. Glorious. Would you bow with me? We are glorious image bearers. You're thinking, oh, Van, listen, if you knew my story. I'm just telling you what God says, that he made you in his image. You are an image bearer of the God of the universe, and that is your greatest distinction. It's what makes you the lily better than the lily. Maybe just in the quiet of the moment, you want to get a head start. A head start on that banquet of words, those compliments. Maybe you want to pray for someone, for their flourishing, for their success, for their closeness to the Father. Reminding yourself in the process that our glory is God's glory in us, that their glory is God's glory in them. Father, you know every story in this room. You know how far we've fallen, where we've struggled. You know where we are repeat offenders. And you love us. You made us in your image. So, Father, remind us. Fill us with the truth of who we are in you, so that we will not spend our lives chasing after who someone else is. Let us set goals, be ambitious, grow, and strive for excellence. But not as people who compare themselves. Instead, as people made in the image of God, called, able to bless others. Remind us, Father, of who we are in you. We pray. In Jesus' name.